In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to graph lines using a chart. Now, this is a skill that we don't use often after we learn slope-intercept form, but if you haven't learned the slope-intercept form way of graphing lines with rise over run, this is the method that you'll be using. And the reason that we teach this is because this works for any function. If you had a function and then you didn't know what it looked like, maybe it's not a line, maybe it did something crazy like this. Really, your best method is to be graphing points by plugging in a bunch of x values to see if you can get the shape of the graph. Now, since these are going to be lines, we're going to know they'll look like lines, but here's how this works. Okay, it works kind of like plugging numbers into a function, input and output. So I'm going to start by setting up my chart here. I'll set up my X and my Y column, and you don't need this column 100%, but I put this in the middle to kind of help me out. So I can kind of keep my work organized. Now, so I've put basically this spot right in here so I can see where I'm plugging things in. Once I've gotten to this point now, I can pick any points that I want for X to try and get a picture of the line. Now, this is where some people get confused because they think, can I pick any line I want or any point that I want? And the answer is yes. You can pick, 0, 1, 2, you can pick -2, you can pick 7, whatever. You can pick 1,000,000 if you want to. The problem is when you're graphing that, 1,000,000 is going to be all the way out here somewhere. Okay, so we'll go ahead and plug these points in. Now, what I'm doing is I'm trying to find the y when x, in this first case, is 0. So to do that, I'm just going to replace the x with a 0. So 0 plus 3 is 3. So that gives me the ordered pair on my graph, 0 for the x, 3 for the y. So when I plug in 0 for x, I get 3 for y. So I'm actually going to graph that point right now on my graph. And we'll assume that this here is my x-axis, and this here is my y-axis. Okay, so I got 0, 3. We'll plug in a 1 here, so 1 plus 3, that'll give me 4. So that gives me the ordered pair 1, 4. So I'll go over 1 and up 4. Next one I'll plug in 2, so 2 for x. 2 plus 3 is 5. That gives me the ordered pair 2, 5. So we'll go over 2, up 5. There's our next point. And I threw this one in here just for kicks to show you don't have to pick the same points 0, 1, and 2. So -2, we'll do -2 plus 3. That's going to give me 1. So that will be the point -2. So we go left 2 and up 1. Now, hopefully when you're done, if you haven't made a mistake, all of these points will line up nicely and neatly. Okay, and you can see here that if I connect these dots, they are all going in a nice straight line here. Okay. If you saw that there was one point out here, you would know that you must have a mistake somewhere in your problem, and it's good to check your work to make sure that that's not the case. Okay? As a recommendation, I always graph at least 3 points when I'm making a chart, because if you just graph 2, let's say I graph these 2 points, I don't necessarily know if one of these I made a mistake on. But if I graph a third and they all do line up, the odds are I've got the right answer. If they don't line up, if I had a point, if these are my lines and I had a point that was off here somewhere, I could tell that one of these points must have a mistake. Okay, we'll try the next one here. And I've got y is equal to 1/2 x minus 4. So again, I'm going to start by setting up the chart. I'll put an x and a y in my columns here. And just to kind of show my work, I'm going to put the right-hand side of this equation in the middle column. Now, we've got a 1/2 here, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So let's try, I don't know, let's try maybe something a little different. We'll do -1, 0, 1, and again, just for kicks, I'm going to graph an extra point there. So we'll do -1, 0, 1, and 2. All right, so again, plugging this in, I've got 1/2 times -1 minus 4. Now, -1 times 1/2 is going to be -0.5, and if I subtract 4 from that, you can check me in your calculator here, but that should be -4.5 or 4 1/2. Okay, if I plug in 0, so 1/2 times 0, that's just going to be 0. And if I subtract 4, 0 minus 4 is -4. Go to the next one here. Half of 1 is 1/2, or 0.5. And if I subtract 0.5, or 1/2, minus 4, I'll get -3.5, or 3.5. Again, finally, this, I don't really need this extra point, but it's not a bad idea to graph an extra just in case. I'm going to plug in 2 here, minus 4. So half of 2 is 1, so 1/2 times 2 is 1. 1 minus 4 is -3. And now let's go ahead and check these out and graph them. Again, I've got all these ordered pairs. I've got -1, -4.5. I've got 0, -4. I've got 1, -3.5. And I've got 2, -3. So again, we'll graph these. Sorry that my lines don't look very nice right there. And we'll start off with our first ordered pair, -1, -4.5. So I'm going to go all the way down to 4 and then go halfway between 4 and 5, and that should be my first point. Next one will go 0, -4. Oh, that point went away for some reason. Let's go back there. So -4.5. And then we'll go to 0. Oh, that point keeps disappearing on me. Let me try that one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4.5. There we go. Okay. Must have been hitting a button. And now we'll go to 0, -4. 1, -3.5. 2, -3. And you should see again that all of these points here make a nice straight line. You could have tried different points. So you might have tried the point 6, for example. Okay. Well, let's check it out. Let's see if it really, does it matter which points I try? Half of 6 is 3, and if I subtract 4, that should give me -1 for the y. So that gives me the ordered pair 6, -1. And let's just kind of see here if this point actually lines up. So to find out where 6, -1 is, we've got to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and down -1. And you can see that it doesn't matter which points you pick. This is still going to line up with the rest of that line. All right, and personally in this type of example, I would pick all even numbers. So when I was actually setting this up, a good choice for making like an X chart here, if you're making your chart with your X's and your Y's, might be a good idea to pick these numbers, 0, 2, and 4. Because even numbers are divisible by 2, that'll make nice even numbers. Now, I didn't do that for this one, but just something to keep in mind. Whatever that bottom number is on the fraction, pick numbers that are evenly divisible by that number if you want to keep nice, even, neat numbers. All right, we got one more to go. And there's a few ways to do this. Teachers teach these differently. The way that I would teach a problem like this, the first thing I would notice is that the difference here is that the y is not isolated or by itself. Okay, so what I would do, again, you don't have to do this when you do a problem like this, and your teacher may teach you to do this differently, but I always start by isolating the y first to try and make it easier to plug things in, so it looks like the previous two examples. It'll also help you when you get to slope-intercept form to have that habit. So what I'll do is I'll start by getting the y by itself, which means on this left-hand side, I've got to move this 4x first because it's the furthest thing from the y on the left side. So to do that, I need to subtract that whole 4x to the other side. And that leaves me with 2y is equal to, I'm going to sneak the -4x out front, and since that 6 is positive, I'll sneak a +6 after that. You could write it as 6 minus 4x, nothing wrong with that, but again, the reason that I'm going to write it this way will be with something that will help you down the road a little bit later. All right, next from here, what I'll do is I'll divide everything through by 2. So that will give me y is equal to -2x plus 3, so divide that whole side over there by 2, and we got our answer now with our y isolated. So we're good to go now to plug things in just like before. So I'm going to set up my chart once more. I'll get my x and my y. We'll do -2x plus 3 will go in the middle. And again, I'm just going to pick any 3 points. Here I'm just going to go, I'll do 0, 1, 2 again. It'd be boring. Okay. So now if I plug in 0, we'll do negative 2 times 0 plus 3. 2 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 3 is 3. So that gives me my first ordered pair. And I'm just going to put these right on the graph now. I get 0, 3, which would be right up here. Next one, we've got negative 2 times 1 plus 3. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Add 3 to that, you should get positive 1. So the point 1, 1 is on my graph there. And then finally, I've got 2. So I'm going to do negative 2 times 2 plus 3. That's negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1. And if I plug this in, I should get 2, negative 1. And again, I could keep going here and make a few more points, but 3 is usually a safe number. So I'll stop there, connect my dots, and there is my line. Okay, so the key is, if you do not see the y isolated, like in the previous 2 examples where there's something over here with the y, go ahead and isolate it first and then plug in your numbers just like before. 3 points is usually a safe bet.